Hey, welcome in to the Wednesday edition. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keyser here with you on a snowy Wednesday morning. Joe, I briefly looked outside. There is some definite accumulation at my house. How we doing? What's going on?
Yeah, same. Probably I'd say 3-4 inches is what it looks like. But looked on the top of the cars. So a nice blanketing. So if anybody listening is out in this stuff, be careful. And hopefully you got your 8 gallons of milk.
Or bread. I mean,
Yeah, well,
my
both.
My wife actually attempted to go to the store yesterday, not to get food. She actually needed something, but I told her to look and see how much bread was still in there while she was there. She said very limited amount of bread still left in there. People were buying like hamburger buns. I'm like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, just you
Like,
gotta
like not to grill burgers, just to have bread.
right. Yeah, gotta have a lot of sandwiches when the world ends.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually we get like whole milk. We drink whole milk, and I usually get the half ones because we've just let them go too much when you get the gallons, and there was one of those left. I got the very last one in the store.
Look at you. What a
Yeah.
guy. What a guy. Keezer, how we doing? How was your trek into the studio this morning?
Hey guys, yeah, my excursion was great. I didn't have too many problems, but I will say, as long as you keep it a relatively safe, speed, you should be fine out there on the road. So yeah, don't worry too much about it. But yeah, doing okay.
Good. Glad to see that you're okay. I was wondering if you're going to have to people have been known to pull an all-nighter at the station. I wonder if
I
that was going to be
know.
Nick Keyser, but Nick Keyser ain't about that life. He ain't
No,
gonna do that.
not really. I did that last year once, but now I got a 4-wheel drive car, so now I'm gonna sleep in my own bed.
That's right.
So the Robby and Rexrode show officially endorses. Hey, folks, go drive in the snow. You should.
Yeah,
It's great.
yeah. It used to be a great time out there. You should give it a shot. Just give it a shot. Yeah, we'll
Just
see.
try it.
See how that goes. We got a lot to get to on the program today. Kuharski will be with us later in the show. We'll get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. I've got some Four Nations takes to espouse out there later as well, which looking forward to that. Joe, we begin with the Derek Carr conversation. Now, I've heard Jared talk about this over the last couple of days. DVD had a very strong and passionate discussion on the Derek Carr front yesterday. And Joe, from what I can gather, this is like anything. You have to judge, people screaming about this. Who is how representative is it of the way Titans fans actually feel? But Joe, from what I've heard from listening to Jared's show, and certainly what I heard yesterday listening to DVD, seems to be a lot of opposition among Titan fans on Derek Carr. They do not seem to have a huge appetite for the Derek Carr part of this. And I'm just curious your thoughts on why that is, your thoughts on Derek Carr in general, and if he's a realistic option for the Titans, which by the way, we'll still wait and see whether or not he is. If he's a realistic option for the Titans this offseason, where do you come down on Derek Carr and that potential to go get him if you're Brian Callahan and this team?
So wait a minute. So are the two shows yelling at each other on this?
No, it's like it's more Titans fans yelling about the idea of Derek Carr being the quarterback. I think they don't think Derek Carr is very good.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's all relative because to me, if we're well, I guess if you're going to include Stafford, then I'd make him third. But if you're not including Stafford, but you are, and I've kind of discounted Derek Carr. I've just assumed that he would be back there. But if he's actually an option, I would put him after Darnold as the best option. He has played. He and Callahan have worked together. He's still, he's pretty good. I mean, it's not terrible. I mean, again, I know. I think my hot take on all this is Justin Fields. Most people have him way lower than I do, but I'd still put Derek Carr ahead of him if he actually were available. Yeah, I don't know why I mean, I get not being excited totally, but again, look at the field and compare him to the field.
Well, that's I think the overarching theme that I come back to is like there have been a lot of Titans fans that throw out, this quarterback here, whether it's Darnold, Carr, Rodgers, whoever. You get through these veteran quarterbacks, and there's a lot to not like about all of them, right? Like there's a reason these quarterbacks either are available or could be available. Derek Carr and Willie and D-Mace and Adam were going through some of the numbers yesterday. Like if you break down the analytics on him, if you look at some of the numbers kind of deeper into it, it's not bad. Like he's been a good quarterback for a while. Now, is he Joe Burrow? No, but he's probably right around the middle, right? Like you're talking about the middle, I don't know, third of the league in quarterback play. Is that what you want at the end of the day? Of course it's not. But like the idea that you're just going to walk away with an elite quarterback this offseason on the veteran market, I just don't think is realistic. Now, maybe you hope that Cam Ward is that guy and you can draft that guy and he eventually turns into that. But like if you're going the veteran quarterback route, like right now they're at the bottom of the totem pole in terms of the quarterback play in this league. It's them, it's Cleveland with Deshaun Watson. Like they're all right there in that bubble. Like the next step to me, if you're going veteran, Joe, is to get to serviceable, good, not great, but good quarterback play. Like, can you do that this offseason if you're going the veteran quarterback route? And I think Derek Carr certainly checks that box.
Yeah, absolutely checks that box. Yeah, it's not exciting, but it's, even like a Stafford would be very much just a short-term bridge thing. And, look, with Stafford, I talk a lot about like Cousins, just not being a good option because of the lack of mobility. But Stafford is used to be more mobile. He's kind of like Rodgers in that way, I guess. Like he used to be able to move a lot better than it looks like he can anymore. So again, would that be a great match with this offensive line? Though we know it'll be different and maybe it'll be fixed. Right now that doesn't sound great, but you'd still go there. But I mean, like the only of all those options, again, Fields, if you think he can get better, or Mac Jones. I mean, some of those guys are the hope that you have growth at the spot. And of course, Darnold showed it this year. So you have that, and he's still young. That's why, to me, he is intriguing. Carr is not that, but he'd give you a chance to be decent. I mean, he'd give you a chance to get yourself together again. At some point, and not too far down the road, you're going to have to figure out who your next quarterback is. And I know everybody thinks in terms of who's your next young drafted quarterback. That'd be great, but look around the league. How many teams are flourishing with quarterbacks not on their first team? I mean, that's kind of how it's gone now. So, that's again, like the Bucks are pretty happy with Baker Mayfield right now. Lions are pretty happy with Jared Goff right now. Rams have been pretty happy with Matthew Stafford, and on and on and on. So yes, of course, you'd love to get the quarterback on a rookie deal because the cap. It's a good thing to have the QB who's not getting paid yet for the rest of your roster, but there's also, sometimes it just doesn't work out that way. So, right now you're just trying to get yourself to decent any way you can do it. Try to win football games again.
Now, here's one thing I've heard, and this came up in the Derek Carr discussion. It's come up in a lot of the veteran quarterback discussions. And I do understand the thought process behind it. I also think that if you're the organization, you got to find a way to overcome this if it happens. Like you talk about finding the next quarterback. So let's say they do go the veteran quarterback route and they're not going to draft Cam Ward or Shedeur Sanders or whatever. And that's the decision they make. Okay. Well, you go out and you get a Derek Carr and he provides good, but not great quarterback play. And you end up winning 7 or 8 games next year. You're not in the playoffs. You're better. You're a competitive football team. And I've heard from Titans fans that have said, okay, well, what does that get us? Like, what good does that do? If you're bringing in a veteran quarterback, you improve by a few wins. It's a better product to watch on Sundays, but it's not an elite product. It's not a playoff quality product. And at the end of the season, you're stuck at 7 or 8 wins, and you're not in a spot to be at a position where you can draft one of those top guys next year. Why would we want to do that? Titans fans have thrown that out there. I understand that concern. I really do. Like I've talked about it, you've got to find the next quarterback. That's the most important thing. But like we've also watched a pretty darn terrible football around here the last couple of years. It would be great to get your quarterback position back to a place, even if you're not drafting one of those two guys this year, where it's a serviceable product to watch. To number one, see if this coach has any idea what he's doing. See if this front office can put together a team around him that looks like you're heading at the right path. Like, yeah, I understand you want to get the next quarterback. You don't have to be 2-15 next year to get that next quarterback.
Yeah. And look, you have to build your football team. So you can sit there. I mean, sometimes it feels like people only focus on quarterback. So it's like, well, you're just going to be average, can't get the great quarterback. But this is a bad team. Build the team, And again, if you build a team that's good enough, then you can, whatever you think of Jalen Hurts, I think he's excellent. But the second round pick who you won a Super Bowl with because you had the best team, both lines of scrimmage, you were loaded all over the place. I mean, so do that in the meantime. And I'm not going to say it will just work out, but it might just work out. It might trade a 4th round pick for a throwaway quarterback who turns into a Pro Bowler. I mean, that does happen.
We've seen it. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll take your thoughts on Derek Carr and the Titans quarterback situation. Would you be interested in a player like Derek Carr this offseason? How do you view quarterback for the Titans? Plus, apparently there's a quarterback take from me, Joe, that I need to explain because it sparked quite the debate on the midday show yesterday. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Taking your thoughts on Derek Carr and the quarterback position. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025. So apparently a quarterback take that I need to explain as well. So we talked about this before in terms of drafting quarterbacks and the Tennessee Titans. And one thing I've thrown out there is I am tired of seeing the Titans look around in the third round and say, oh, look, this quarterback is still here. Or in the second round and say, oh, look, can you believe it? That guy made it all the way through the first round, and now we've got a chance to go up to the second round and snag him. Let's go do it. I'm tired of seeing the Titans do that. I want conviction in my quarterback, meaning that I want the Titans to look in a draft, evaluate a quarterback, and be convinced that's their guy. And one of the examples I brought up is Will Levis, and we talked about it the day after he was drafted. You know, forget the way that it's played out with Will Levis. We all know that Will Levis is not going to be the quarterback here, and it didn't work out. I'm not even talking about that. Forget that part of the conversation. One thing we talked about the day after he was drafted was, okay, if you really loved Will Levis and you really thought he was your franchise guy, why didn't you take him at number 11? There was no way that the Titans could have possibly known that had they passed on Will Levis at number 11 when they took Peter Skoronski, that Will Levis was ever going to come back around and be available to them when the second round began. There's no way they could have possibly known that. We know what happened. They moved up to go get him, and then we've seen what's happened since then. My point on all this is, if you really were convinced and convicted, and that was your guy heading into the draft, you wouldn't have let him go past number 11 overall. So that sparked a debate yesterday on DVD. Willie thinks that whole idea is just not how things operate. Derek Mason is on my team and believes that, like, if they loved Will Levis, they should have taken Will Levis at number 11 overall and not waited around, and wants to say, like, if you're drafting a Cam Ward or a Shedeur Sanders, and it's different with the number 1 overall pick, that needs to be your guy heading into the draft. I'm done taking these flyers on quarterbacks. And Willie's point, Joe, was like, every quarterback you take is a flyer. So I understand that part of it. I'm just tired of watching the Titans look around and say, oh, well, Malik Willis made it down to pick 86. Let's take a shot. Or, hey, Will Levis is still there at the beginning of the second round. Let's take a shot and see if he could be the quarterback. I want no part of that this year if I'm the Tennessee Titans. Don't be coming around at pick 35 and be like, hey, look, Jackson Dart's still there. How about that? Let's do it.
Yeah, no, I'm with you, and I do think that it depends on what kind of team you are a little bit. So I especially, it's easy. I mean, I'm second guessing to some extent more than first guessing, because when they took Levis, I was like, well, hey, I mean, it's the Levis. I look at those two as different too, like, especially because the Willis thing came after they were the 1 seed. That was the right? That was the next year. Do I have that mistaken?
No, that's correct. That's correct.
So I mean, like, you are right there, and that's a valuable pick. That's a top 100 pick, like we talk about. If we're gonna make that the line of demarcation, top 100 pick, and that's totally just a flyer, right? Like, yeah, all right. Now, granted, at the time, people were like, oh my goodness, this guy was going to go in the top 5 and you got him at 86. And then the next response is, and why do you think that is?
Yeah,
that one that's especially like at that moment, if you're Tannehill, you got to be like, oh my gosh. Now, when then they take Levis the next year, that is, we thought, that they were maybe going to do the QB thing. Right. So,
right.
I mean, those are very different situations to me, just because it wasn't out of nowhere, I guess, that they took a quarterback. But to me, in both cases, you're good. and you're trying to win and you have a good quarterback and you need help at different spots to help the quarterback. And instead of doing that, you go back-to-back years with a potential successor for the quarterback. So you're basically, alienating him, ticking him off. I mean, what do you think the locker room thought too in those moments, right? Like, I mean, I guess maybe some people may have been out on Tannehill in the locker room, but I don't think too much of that was going on. So they're like, oh, well, God, we need help on the O line, the D line. I mean, so now with this team, which is obviously so bad and needs so much work and isn't in any kind of window other than get the heck out of the basement of the NFL. I guess, like if the big board in the 5th round says, well, actually, Will Howard is just the top guy on your board. I'm just giving an example. I mean, it's the top player on your board. You didn't take a QB again at that point. What have the Titans done? They've probably signed a veteran, so we kind of know the situation. I mean, if it's like, it's going to be the whoever they signed and Levis, or okay, this guy's the top one on their board. Yeah, Will Howard, or I don't know who else could that be, somewhere a little bit like lower in the
Win
draft.
yours.
Yeah. I mean, that one in particular, I wouldn't be excited about. But okay, the kid from Syracuse who used to be at Kyle McCord.
Yeah.
Like if it really is like you're in the room, it's like this is the best player on the board. Like, okay, I don't hate that, but I think that especially because again, both of those guys were high picks. Those were valuable picks at a time when you were in a window of winning. And even now you're in a window of building and you have so many needs. So I'm with you. It's like, if you're going to do the quarterback thing, I mean, do it, go to the, now what if the Titans are like, well, our number one quarterback is Tyler Shugg from Louisville, actually, and we're not telling anybody, but we think we can get him, in the with that 2nd round pick. I mean, wow. I guess it is possible, right? It is possible that your quarterback evaluations are like Ward and Sanders are like 5th and 6th, and your quarterback evaluations that you believe you can get your guy later. I mean, I guess, but that would be a stunner, and it would feel like taking a flyer, right? That really the way I laid it out isn't taking a flyer, though, is it? I mean, it's gambling.
It's gambling, but that's the Levis situation specifically. And I realize that the head coach and the general manager who made that pick are both no longer here, so it's a different regime.
Brinker's here though.
Brinker is here, and the Levis pick specifically, like we talked about it the day after it happened. It's like, so you had a chance to pick him at number 11, and you went with Peter Skoronski again, having no way of knowing that Will Levis would ever be available to you again. And then he came back and he was available to begin the 2nd round. And then you're like, oh, cool. Yeah. Well, let's just go take a shot at it. Like,
exactly.
I don't want that. Like that to me does not scream conviction in your quarterback pick.
I agree.
That doesn't scream, oh, that's my guy right there.
Right. It comes away like, wow, what a value. You got the future all-pro guard and this incredibly talented QB, right? But again, like, so the example I gave you, like no one's talking about Tyler Shugg being a high pick in this draft. Everybody was talking about Will Levis being a high pick, right?
Exactly.
So I mean, I guess so. Like, if say it is possible to love someone and be like, but we're going to hold strong and we can get him at pick X. I guess in that situation, I mean, again, it would. If it's truly not taking a flyer, then fine. But yeah, I disagree with Willie's idea that, well, everything's taking a flyer. Well, yeah, but if you are going for a quarterback, then if you are going for the top quarterback, you have the number 1 pick. You better use it on a quarterback. That's showing conviction in your quarterback.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Take more of your thoughts on the quarterback position. I've got some 4 nations takes for the U.S. and Canada to get to later this hour as well. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game. Tune in to 102.5, 106.3 The Game tonight for Vanderbilt men's basketball as the Commodores take on Kentucky with a 6 o'clock tip-off pregame show beginning at 5:30. Vanderbilt men's basketball presented by Athletes Unlimited Pro Basketball coming to Nashville's Municipal Auditorium now through March the 2nd. Go to auprobasketball.com for more details and to purchase tickets. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Joe, speaking of the draft, we had Gentry Estes on the show yesterday, and he talked about it. You know, he's watching Cam Ward, he's watching Shedeur Sanders, and he's looking at Ward specifically, and he says, you know, the more I watch Cam Ward, the more I like Cam Ward. Now, we've talked a lot about these two quarterbacks, and I think the position that you and I have both come down on is don't know that I love either one of them, and don't know that I think either one of them are number one pick worthy here as we sit here today. Having said that, I told you I've gone down a YouTube rabbit hole of watching Cam Ward. You can find a lot of things that you like when you watch him play. And I guess my question for you is this. Let's say that's the way the Titans go, and they pick Cam Ward. What do you think the process will be like for him in terms of his readiness to play in the NFL? Is it a situation where they draft Cam Ward and they would be better served having a veteran start the season and then him take over eventually? Would it be a situation where you feel like you should play Cam Ward immediately and that he might have some skills that are immediately able to translate to the NFL? You know, I think the Anthony Richardson part of this is not a good comparison. Like, first off, Anthony Richardson is an unbelievable athlete, but he was a very raw prospect at quarterback. Cam Ward, in my opinion, has demonstrated way more at playing the actual quarterback position in college than Anthony Richardson has to this point. But how do you view the readiness of Cam Ward to play if that's the way the Titans decide to go?
It's a good question. I can't sit here and pretend I know. I mean, look, I generally default to sit is the best option. Like I really do think the Colts messed that up. But at the same time, I also think there's something to like someone getting figured out a little bit by the league. Because like if you really go back to the early days of Anthony Richardson, their whole plan was to play Minshew. And it was like, this kid's too good. And again, that's practice and camp and whatever. But like, he was, and then like early in his rookie year, I remember there was a game, I think they lost to the Rams, but he actually was unbelievable in the second half. Like he was like everything, lasers all over there, run all over the place, crazy comeback. And it's like, oh my God, this guy is, here it is, and then it levels off and falls off the table or whatever. But I'm just saying, like, you can have a plan to sit them, but then you sit there and you watch Jaden Daniels just drag a team to a playoff success, beating the number one seed on the road. And you're like, gee, good thing you didn't want to sit that guy this year. Good thing you didn't go with Marcus and go 6-11. That's what you would have done, right? If you would have followed the conventional wisdom of, sit the rookie. So I just think it's situational. You just have to see how someone handles things. With Jaden Daniels, he had played a lot too. Remember, he played like 3 years at Arizona State.
Yep.
Before he was a starter as a freshman. So he played a ton of football in college, which is like Cam Ward. Now, I understand Incarnate Word may not be, the highest level of competition, but he has played a ton of quarterback and he played it very well at Washington State. And then everybody like found out who he was, the casual fan found out who he was last year, and he did some ridiculous stuff. I mean, I would tend to think that, he's one of those guys who would have a pretty good chance of playing right away. Again, I like the idea of sitting him, but if you're the Titans, you're sitting him for who?
Right.
Who's you take him? Have you kept Levis? Have you kept Levis to be like, okay, well, Will, you can test out how much you've improved and you can compete with the rookie, and whichever one of you will split reps for a while, whichever one of you is better, then you'll be the starter. Or are you getting more of a veteran type, a Minshew type guy who has, actually done some things in the league where you would basically have a plan of, we'll probably go a few weeks with this guy, and then at some point Cam will take over.
Yeah, like you could go the veteran route and draft a quarterback. It's hard though, Joe, for me to believe that you go to the veteran route with anywhere near significant money and draft the quarterback. Like I don't think you're going like Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix from last year with the needs this team has. And look, it ended up working out okay for Atlanta because Kirk Cousins fell off the table, and then they had another quarterback to go to. So I don't know. Maybe more teams are willing to do that in the future. But I just feel like with the needs that are on this roster right now, I mean, Kirk Cousins was supposed to be like the final piece to put Atlanta over the top and have them win the division and get in the playoffs. This Titans team is not there. I feel like with the pieces that are available to them, I got a tough time seeing them committing significant money to the quarterback position in the veteran market and then following that up with a number 1 overall pick at quarterback.
Yeah, I have a hard time seeing it too. The difference with the Falcons, and again, when the Falcons did it, I know I definitely screamed about it, as did a lot of other people. But the Falcons, they got a lot of elements of a good team. They have a decent roster, a decent team. So they're able and playing in a bad division. Not that the Titans don't play in a bad division, but they had a chance to do something, and the Titans really don't. So I think that's just a waste of resources to have money and that pick on that position. So if it'll be interesting, like whatever the Titans do in free agency, obviously, I guess if they do nothing, we'll really have our answer. But if they like the level of QB they sign, I think definitely will be a little bit of a tell on the draft.
If they sign Jimmy Garoppolo, is that a tell on the draft to you? I would say no.
It's funny how we never talk about Jimmy.
I know.
But he'd be like right on that borderline, right? I'd probably say no to. I'd probably say, yeah, it's just where he is in his career is he's perfect to start for a month and be, the guy in the QB room, and then the rookie takes over for him. But you're probably drafting a quarterback if you sign him. Putting everything on Jimmy G's plate seems a little bit haphazard these days.
Jimmy, we've been waiting for you to become available, and it's finally happened. You're here. You're the next quarterback of the Tennessee Titans, baby. Welcome in.
The chosen Tom Brady successor. He had a good run.
He did.
He had a good run.
I just want to point out that there was some Marcus shade that was thrown around in this segment, and it did not come from me. Rexrode just immediately being like, we could have started Marcus. You'd have been 6-11. Want to point that out.
Yeah. Well, maybe I'm a little down on Marcus. He did okay when he was in Atlanta, but even if it's not 6-11, we can all agree it's not what happened, right? Like we can all agree, like Marcus Mariota has never played quarterback like Jaden Daniels played as a rookie.
Well, and look, in all seriousness, it's completely different players. It's completely different prospects. But like the old adage of sitting the quarterback that we've talked about, like the Packers approach, where they've set Rodgers and Love for multiple years, and that's worked out well for them. Mahomes set for a year as well. Like you can find a lot of examples of quarterbacks sitting down that have worked out really well. I do wonder though, like if you're an NFL general manager or if you're like a scouting staff and a coaching staff talking through all this, it's like, well, go look at CJ Stroud from 2 years ago. Go look at Jaden Daniels last year. Look how much of a bump and how ready to play those guys were. And to your point, like, Shedeur Sanders played a lot of college football. Cam Ward's played a lot of college football. Doesn't necessarily translate to being ready to play in the NFL, but those two guys, the one thing I'll say about both of them that I think is a big positive is they've both played a lot of football.
Yeah, look, I do think that I think in both cases, they're definitely probably more ready. Now, some people would also say, like where they are as prospects because they played so much, it kind of shows you maybe the ceiling isn't as high as some people, right? But yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, Williams and May, played quite a bit, right? Yeah. I mean, Williams played at Oklahoma before he went to USC. Yeah, Mahomes played. Yeah. I mean, usually if you're an NFL quarterback, like you're good enough to start a whole bunch of years. That's the crazy thing about the Richardson thing is more the outlier than anything, right? Just the 1 year of starting and it goes that high. And maybe some buyer's remorse now, but
Yeah,
not for
good.
Indy Ben necessarily.
Not necessarily. Ed on the text line says, what happens when they sign the Garoppolo type of quarterback and Levis plays better in camp? It's from Ed on the text line.
Yeah.
What happens is Titans fans immediately like throw their head back against the wall. That's what happens.
Well, look, I mean, again, I wouldn't say I'm optimistic. I wouldn't say I'm like as optimistic as PK, who's coming in later, but I absolutely can see a scenario where Levis figures some stuff out and at some point is playing pretty good quarterback for somebody, and Titans fans are looking, there's another person. Oh, there you go somewhere else. And all of a sudden you're better. I mean, the thing about Levis is, like, if he's still on this roster next year, whatever else is in that quarterback room, completely different, situation psychologically, right?
Yes.
Now he's back to screw you, I'll show you. Whereas last year it's like, oh my God, the entire world is on my shoulders and I'm doing a Mayo commercial. I mean,
Well,
it's and sometimes, man, that makes a huge difference.
Well, the bottom line is, though, in terms of like fan reaction, like he could go out there and be in camp and legitimately be the best quarterback in camp, and Titans fans are not going to care. They're going to be like, I
Oh,
do
yeah.
not care. Do not put him in the game when the regular season rolls around.
Oh, 100%. No, I mean, that ship has sailed. So, and then we'll get into, oh, great, tell us more about what's happening in camp. Like that,
Yeah.
Makes that much of a difference. Yeah.
Yeah, I can't wait for that time of year again. 615-737-1025, our phone number, 615-737-1025. We'll take more of your thoughts on the quarterback front, plus some takes I have on what this week has meant for the game of hockey with the Four Nations tournament and the games still to come, coming up tomorrow night between the U.S. and Canada. We'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, the game. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this Wednesday morning. Taking your thoughts, 615-737-1025. So we got the U.S. and Canada coming up tomorrow night in the Four Nations final. I am very excited about it after the game we saw last Saturday. I think it's going to be difficult to live up to the hype, but we'll see if they can do it. This is also a situation where, like, the USA got the first laugh. We'll see if they can get the last one with what I'm sure is going to be a very motivated Canadian team heading into this. But either way, I mean, it's shaping up to be just an awesome night for hockey and an awesome night in the USA-Canada final here. You know, I've heard some of the discourse this week, Joe. You know, John Cooper, who's the coach of Canada and coaches the Tampa Bay Lightning in his day job, talked about this. He's like, this tournament has done more for hockey than anything in the last 10 years. And I heard that, and I got to thinking about it. And I think you may be right from the standpoint of, I was looking yesterday. We were on the air in the studio, and I turned around, and they've got PK Subban on ESPN. And, I mean, they did a lot of hockey coverage of the USA-Canada game, of the Four Nations tournament in general on ESPN yesterday. It's been all over the place in terms of, like, people who are normally not all that interested in hockey have been talking about the game Saturday night and the way that the tournament is played out. Some of it, Joe, I think is the timing of the sports calendar as well. Like, there's not a lot going on right now. You have an NBA All-Star game that is just abysmal every year, that people talk about every year, how bad it is. The NHL All-Star game, quite frankly, has kind of been right there in the same mold, and they got away from it this year, and it looks like a great decision. So you got all that kind of factoring in. I think that this has been a very, very good week for the sport of hockey in general. We talked about it earlier in the week, Joe. Like, I don't think you should do this every year. I think it loses some of its luster if you do it every year. But more best on best international hockey, I think, is a good thing. The TV ratings were outstanding for the game Saturday. I have a feeling they're going to be really good tomorrow as well for the final. I don't know if the NHL foresaw it going this way, but I don't think a tournament that, quite frankly, I was pretty skeptical about heading into it could have worked out better for them to this point.
No, I can't disagree. And look, I knocked this last week, and I still philosophically, I still have a problem with best on best, but let's exclude a bunch of the best. Right. You know, it's not perfect, you know, but I guess you can look at it like I've tried to look at it more kind of like from a soccer mindset, you know, in terms of, you know, there's obviously the World Cup is the ultimate, which and now moving forward, the Olympics should be the ultimate, right? With these guys playing for their country for gold medals, like that's the ultimate. But there are other, you know, high level soccer tournaments that can, you know, slice it up in different ways that still move the needle and soccer fans are very much into, and it's just high level. It's a lot of the best players. And so I try to look at it from that perspective. And I mean, you can't argue with the competition, the level of intensity, with the fan response. Like you said, I mean, great ratings for the last one. I think it'll do great Thursday. A lot of anticipation. Apparently the tickets are just, it's like impossible to get a ticket. I actually watched, oh my gosh, please help me with her name. She does a great job on ESPN. I saw her with Scott Van Pelt last night. Covers hockey along with Greg and
Emily Kaplan.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Talking about how she's got like all these NHL, like former NHL players, like, hey, do you know any way I can get into this thing? You know, I mean, so no, it's like, you can't argue with the results. I mean, it's amazing. John Cooper says that, and it's like, it's been a week, you know, like
it's
been a week. It's been a couple games, but hey man, like, it's just cool. Like, it's just in any format, it's cool to put these fantasy teams together and then have these guys want it as badly as they obviously do. And look, frankly, they're dropping the gloves like like happened in that game, I mean, that just adds to it.
Yeah, I think also like there's been a little bit of personality. Like I love the Kachuk brothers. Like as somebody who's obviously pulling for Team USA, like I love Matthew and Brady Kachuk. Like they're really easy to root for when they're on your team, right? Like you watch them play and you understand why. Like if you're like Matthew Kachuk plays for the Florida Panthers. Like if you're a Tampa Bay Lightning fan, most times you probably hate him because he gets under your skin. Like, look, Predators fans, when he played for Calgary and they got into some intense battles with Calgary, like Predators fans hated Matthew Tkachuk. But he's like the ultimate example of a guy who's a total heel when he's not on your team. But when he's on your team, you love him. Like they've shown a little bit of personality, which you and I have talked about. This league has been lacking for a long time. You got a little bit of that going for you. And again, like just when the product and the level of play was as high as it was on Saturday night, and you have some of the best players in the world as invested as they are, then I think that makes a huge difference. And again, I think the time of the year that we're in right now, where there is no NFL going on, the NBA, you and I have been big NBA fans. I think even we would probably have to admit the NBA's got some problems right now that they got to get figured out moving forward. I think the timing of all this is working out really well for the NHL.
Yeah, no question, no question. That's a big part of it. Yeah, the personality thing for sure. I mean, that's the eternal, sort of lament of the hockey fan, which is just, man, more and more. I mean, Subban is on TV now, which we all knew he'd end up on TV,
yes,
and he's doing a really good job.
He's really good at it.
Yeah, he's great. He was one of those guys who, like, wow, hey, someone willing to say something a little bit outlandish and kind of be funny and all that. I mean, like Canadian fans, they're rooting hard for Connor McDavid, but then after he has a hat trick Thursday, I like hockey. It's like you gotta
live a little, buddy.
Give us a little bit. But yeah, the Kachucks definitely are. I think a lot more people are kind of have been exposed to them, and sometimes that's what it takes to get more fans for your sport.
Ty on the text line says, I had two guys I work with come into my office to talk about the fights the other night. I've never heard them even mention hockey before. It's definitely getting some attention. Like, yeah, like I think all of that we just talked about. Plus, when you do have like the fights, and I know some people had a problem with them because they felt like they were quote unquote staged. But there's no doubt, like if you were in the building and even watching on TV, like when they dropped the gloves 3 times in the first 10 seconds, I was like, all right, here we go. Like that's, Kevin Bieksa on Sportsnet called it the best start to a hockey game in history. And that's a lofty bar, but I mean, given the amount of talent out there and the way that game started, it's hard to argue. Like that's how you set the tone.
Yeah, too bad he wasn't watching Ty Domi and Bob Probert drop the gloves in 1993, which we got a keg in college just to watch that fight. But it's close, though. It's close.
Well, if you bring that up, we might need to get our correspondent Darren McCarty back on the show at some point. Just get his thoughts on all this.
I think we do. God, no doubt, man. We got to get him on ASAP.
615-737-1025, our phone number. We'll take more of your thoughts on the Four Nations tournament, your thoughts on the Titans and NFL free agency coming up next as well. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Hour number 2, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get-it-all. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Nick Keys are here with you on this snowy Wednesday morning. Paul Kuharski will be with us later in the program. We'll get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. Joe, I've got the news on in front of me right now. The weather's still rolling in, some backups around our area here on the road. So just make sure that you're careful if you're rolling in there today. Maybe a little too confident that we were earlier in the program, just encouraging everyone to drive. We're gonna step back on that.
Keyser invites you to go out there and do some fishtailing with him. Let's go make some snow angels with your car. Keyser will be out in the Cracker Barrel parking lot at 9:15.
That sounds lovely to me, man. I get pancakes and French toast and
not in the parking lot. You don't.
No, but if I'm at Cracker Barrel and I'm doing that, in my free time, I can go get some food after.
You might have to break in though if they're closed. So cook it yourself.
I'll figure it out.
Don't close. It ain't closing.
Is that right?
It ain't closing for a little bit of snow. These are high level people over here.
That's true.
High level people over there. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com 615-737-125. So Joe, I'll ask you, if you had to rate your excitement level 1 through 10 for USA and Canada coming up tomorrow night, what would it be? How would you rank it?
I'm excited. Look, I am, as you know, I watch college basketball, and actually it works out pretty well. And I watch college basketball because I love college basketball. And also, I have to a lot more now. Which Katie, I like to talk. I'm sorry, Katie. I don't know what to tell you. I gotta watch the basket. But it's actually pretty good because it's a pretty weak, pretty slow night on the college hoops front. So yeah, I'm definitely looking forward to it. And a week ago, I wasn't circling this date like, man, this championship game is going to be amazing in the Four Nations. So no, I'd rate my excitement level a 6. That's pretty good, right?
6 is pretty good. Yeah, for a game that at the end of the day, it's a championship game, but it's not like it's an Olympic gold medal. It's not a Stanley Cup final. It's not a Super Bowl or anything like that. I'm pretty excited. I'm not going to sit here and compare it to last year we had a game 7 in the Stanley Cup final between Florida and Edmonton. I'm not as excited as I was for that. That's a championship on the line in what had been an incredible playoff series, with that one in particular. Had both teams win 3 games in a row and then a winner-take-all game 7. So, the stakes are high. I don't think it's like a Stanley Cup final type stakes. I say that, though, and Jack Eichel, who plays for Team USA, was in there talking the other day about how this is going to be the biggest game he's ever played in. And I'm like, well, he played for a national championship and he won a Stanley Cup. And now he's talking about this being the biggest game he's ever played in. That's an interesting take from old Jack Eichel there. So some people are that excited about it. The ticket prices would suggest that it is in that realm.
Yeah. Again, that's great. And I'm done. I'm done poo-pooing the thing.
Doesn't sound like you are.
No, I'm not. No, I am. But I'm more excited for any Olympic game than this game. I
would agree.
I'm more excited, and frankly, there's a lot of Stanley Cup playoff games that will happen this spring that I will be more excited for. Maybe, I guess it depends on the matchup, but certainly any game 7 of any Stanley Cup playoff series, I'm more excited for than this.
I would agree with that. I don't know that I would agree any Olympic game, just because I think these two teams make it different. If it was a final between USA and Sweden, I don't think I'd have the same level of interest in it. But it's USA, Canada, and forget all the political crap that's going on with it. It's a hockey rivalry that has been brewing for a long time. And the last 2 times we've seen them play best on best at the Olympic level was 2010 in one of the greatest hockey games I've ever seen to decide a gold medal. In 2014, it was kind of a clinic put on by Canada, but the final score of that game was 1-0. And I can't remember if that was the semifinal matchup or when that was, but it was a great game. And the Canadians, I mean, they were just awesome in that game. But like USA, I heard Elliot Friedman breaking this down earlier this week. Like they've played 20 times best on best, and Canada's won 14 of them. I think they're 14-5-1. So that was the 5th time that the United States has won when it's been best on best. And like one thing I'm interested to see, it's like, all right, you did it once if you're USA. Like, can you do it again? Can you beat them again twice in a row in the same tournament? And like, does that mean that you have closed the gap with American born players? Like, there's still way more high level Canadian players than there are American players. But like right now, the high level American players are pretty darn good. Like, they've got some really good players. And by the way, Quinn Hughes, who's probably the best defenseman of all of them, hadn't even played in this tournament for USA.
Yeah, and I do think that this is definitely a commentary on just American hockey coming along. And, you could look at where we are right now, and I think I remember all the talk at the time, and it made sense. You could look back to the 2010 gold medal game and say, is this one of those moments where, where you got some kids who are like, you know what, I think I'm going to pick hockey, instead of basketball or baseball, whatever. I mean, like,
yeah,
sometimes moments like that can help. Obviously, a big part of it is, being in different markets in the NHL, all those things. Sheets of ice, we know that here in this city, get those sheets of ice, give kids an opportunity to play the game. But I think this may be a little bit of a glimpse of, like there's progress. And I don't know, does this and all the interest advance that a little bit? I mean, I think anytime you can push to the top of the sports world, it's hard for hockey to do that. Then I think that can be real valuable for you.
Well, and I think a big question out of all this is like, are casual fans who maybe turned that game on Saturday night and watched hockey intently for the first time, are they going to be like NHL fans now? Like, out of this, are they picking an NHL team to follow? Like, is somebody
picking a player?
Picking a player.
Pick a player.
Yeah. Well, we talked about that like when Subban came here, right? Like, there were people that rooted for the Predators because for no other reason than PK Subban was on their team. I think to some degree that happens with Steven Stamkos too. Now, unfortunately, the results have not been there this year to really drive that home. But like, there are players that, just like any other sport, people follow those players. Does that happen out of this tournament here from whether it's, Matthew Tkachuk or, whoever, Connor McDavid on the Canadian? Like, this is a big opportunity for the league, I think, to really attract more fans. And we saw like individually here, Joe, with like when the Predators made their run and they captured, and this was a much smaller scale just because it was here locally and not on a national thing. But when the Predators made their run in 2017, like a lot of local people who I know who have never watched hockey before in their life watched that and have since become hockey fans because of that run. And they're still Predators fans because of that run. Like, how much does that happen with this?
Yeah, for sure. No, there's no doubt. And again, that's the team thing versus, the individual thing. I mean, I know like certainly a lot of people, I think Edmonton Oilers fans, followed Gretzky for the rest of his career with a tear in their eye, But so it takes obviously a special player. But yeah, like the Tkachuks, that's the type. I mean, those are the kind of guys who not only are they, they're great players, tough, obviously, but also, like you said, they've got some personality, so that helps. So, yeah, I think absolutely, you're exposing yourself to some new people, so you hope that something like that pays off. Yeah, I think it's hard like that compared to like the Preds run. I mean, you're talking about
it's very different.
Yeah, you're talking about a city that's swept up for 2 months in something, and like just so. Like just the scenes here and all that stuff. It was so much. It was about more than what was going on the ice, Yeah. And so people like just got caught up in like the excitement of that. But I don't think there's any question that they added to their fan base in that thing. So there's a lot of opportunity for that with the NHL and hockey too. There's a lot of people out there who just, I've talked to people my whole life like, well, it's just I can't really get into it. And it's, and I've always said, if you go to one game, and first of all, just tell me after you go watch it live. But anything like this has got to help.
Well, we brought up Matthew Tkachuk, a couple years ago, Joe, in the offseason, we were talking about like him being available for trade and like the Predators should move heaven and earth to go get him. It is interesting to think about like what's happened to him the last couple of years. He went to Florida, immediately made a Stanley Cup final. The next year won a Stanley Cup and has been a key force here for Team US. Like he's on a pretty good run right now individually with what he's doing.
Yeah, they should have given half of Nashville for him. Ethan from Lawrenceburg says the Subban trade got me to watch hockey, and I've never really stopped. It's a great sport, and I think once if you really get into it, pay attention to it, I think it's easy to get hooked. It's hard to get people to get to that point, but once you actually take the time to get into it, I think it's very easy to get hooked on hockey.
Coming up next, Joe Rexrode is tired of the negativity, and he's going to put a stop to it. Coming up next, we'll get into that. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. I got a 4-pack of tickets to give away to the Nashville Celebrity Comic-Con coming up at the Nashville Fairgrounds March the 1st and March 2nd. Be caller 3, 615-737-1025. 615-737-1025. Caller 3 will win a 4-pack of tickets to the Nashville Celebrity Comic-Con coming up at the Nashville Fairgrounds. Joe Rexrode, you're tired of the negativity. It's time to bring some positivity around here in a year where, particularly with the local professional sports teams, it's been rough. It's been a rough go of things. Kind of set the scene of where we're going here, where this idea originated from.
Well, we had Gentry Estes on yesterday, and I mentioned his column that when he was on with us that he had written. So first he wrote a column. Basically, he wrote just about how rough it was, and like the starting point here was listening to Kaharski and I scream at each other, and then his daughter in the car was like, "Isn't sports?" I think the quote was, "Isn't sports supposed to be fun?" And he's like, "Yeah, fair point." So like Sean Henry read this, and long story short, invited Gentry. He went to a game as a fan, sitting in the stands, and he brought his daughter, who's not into sports. She brought her friend, and they actually had a good time. So I thought that was very nice. And I thought, all we do is complain. These teams suck. Both get the number 1 pick. This terrible trade, this terrible move, this quarterback can't play, this goalie, oh my God, it's 8 years of this coming up here at a large price. So I was like, what? Let's see if we can. I'll tell you, I have not prepared for this, Robby. I have not prepared.
I haven't either.
Okay, good. Well, that's what it should be. This is off the cuff. Try to say nice things about the Titans and the Predators, and we invite the listeners too. Whatever nice things you have to say. I'll say this for the Preds since we're on the topic. It's still they do a very good job of making, engaging the fans when you're at the game. As long as they're not playing Creed or Glorious Domination, it's a very good atmosphere, I think, for fans to enjoy themselves. So there's one.
Is that all you got?
Well, I mean, I was going to give you a chance.
I didn't know if that was it. I just wanted to check.
Measuring cheek size.
I keep going with the Preds. Roman Josi. There you go. Roman Josi. Still a great player and a fun player to watch. So there's a couple. I mean, I figured that you would have something nice to say. I didn't have a ton,
Well, I mean, look, that's kind of the point of the conversation. There's not a ton to like about what's going on right now. The one thing I will say that I think in terms of their hockey team right now that I like Fedor Svechkov. I like Zach LaRue. I like some of the young guys that haven't even made it to the league yet. I do think they legitimately, for the first time in a while, I think they've legitimately got a good pipeline. Like, I think they've got a good pipeline of young players. The question at that point is going to be, all right, well, how many of them are like great players? Like, is Tanner Molendyk a great player? Is he going to be a great defenseman? Can a Svechkov or a LaRue or a Matthew Wood or somebody in that mold, a Joachim Kemmel, can they turn into a great player at the NHL level? Like, they need a couple of those guys to be like great players at the level. But I think they went through a long stretch, and this happens when you're a good team and you're trading picks at the deadline to pick up players. They went through a long stretch where their pipeline was just bad. Like, they didn't have a lot of prospects. They didn't have quality prospects. I think you saw that for a while, right? Like, they just didn't have a lot of young players that were coming up and making impacts. I think that has started to change. I think, they got three more first-round picks coming this year, so it could continue to change. But like, if you're a Predators fan, we talk so much about the older core and like the problems that are there that are still going to be there that they got to find a way to get out of. I think part of how you get out of it, Joe, is like the ascension of some of these younger guys. And for the first time in a while, I feel like pretty good that they have some actual pieces there with some of their younger guys that could turn into some legitimate players, not, some of the stuff that they've rolled through there the last 5-6 years.
There you go. That was very positive. I would also add that they have a lot of picks. They have a lot of draft capital to do some different things. So some of these Barry Trotz moves of late have not panned out exactly as you hoped.
It has
But
not.
but there is because of everything that's been done, in the last 2 years, there is still there's like you said, there's some legit prospects coming up. There's some picks. There's at least hope that that some of these guys are going to really turn into difference makers. That is on the table, and I think that some of what was going on before is some of it was being in that window, right? And David Poyle moving people and things like that, and buying and buying and buying, and some of it maybe are we seeing just like an improvement ground up in some cases in terms of their organization, the farm system, and all that.
Yeah, maybe so. I mean, that's what you hope. Like you hope that you're getting better at identifying particularly forward talent, right? Like they got to get some young forwards in here that are really good. On the Titans front, Joe, I think legitimately the first positive that comes to mind for the Titans really comes directly out of how bad they were this year. And it's you got the number one pick. It's an exciting thing for a franchise. That's like the first thing when I was trying to think about, what's nice about the Titans? The first thing I thought of was, oh, yeah, they got the number one pick. Good for them. We'll see how they use it.
Well, they have a new stadium. That's where I start. They got a new stadium coming. Mike in Lebanon says it's going to be nice to have a better stadium to watch the Titans lose games. That seemed a little bit of shade thrown there, Mike. I'd like to, since you brought up the Titans, I want to go back to the Preds. Their ownership does not seem incompetent.
That's true. That is true.
I mean, it's early, but I'm just saying, like, it seems like, like they have some idea of what's going on. What else with the Titans? They've got
Nick Folk is pretty good.
Nick Folk is pretty darn good. There are some young players to be excited about. I think with any pro sports team you want to believe that you have some young players whose best, whatever sport it is ahead of them, right? So you just mentioned some of the guys with the Preds. I would say I think that it's definitely possible with Tavondre Sweat. I mean, I think he could be pretty good. I think J.C. Latham can be a really good player. I think Jarvis Brownlee could be a really good player. I mean, I'm running out, but I gave you 3 there. Okay.
I think I've got one. They've got the number one pick. Craig throws out that the throwback jerseys the Titans have are great. That's the end of the list. We talked about that a little bit yesterday. The Oilers throwbacks, potentially the biggest positive with the Titans franchise right now.
Those throwbacks are amazing. Nate, though, says that you don't have Jets or Cowboys ownership when it comes to draft picks / media comments. True. Now,
well, you definitely don't have it with media comments.
Yeah, some media comments might be fine, might be good at some point, but
I don't think anybody's asking for Jerry Jones. You don't have to have a weekly press conference.
Right. I'm sure there will be a nice groundbreaking shovel in the ground and maybe a couple words spoken into the ether.
Sure there will. We'll take more of your positive thoughts on the Titans and the Predators coming up next. Kuharski will be with us later in the program. We'll also get to the Rex rant with Joe Rexrode. All that ahead. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Welcome back in. Robby and Rexrode, brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. We'll have the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up here in just a few minutes. Paul Kuharski will be with us at 8 o'clock as well. We'll get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. Joe, we're throwing out positives, of which there are not many right now, between the Predators and the Tennessee Titans. One thing that somebody asked me a couple weeks ago that I would love to get your thoughts on. You know, we've talked about the idea of the Titans having the number 1 overall pick, the Predators potentially having the number 1 overall pick. With the lottery system, we'll see where they end up and all that. Regardless of where they end up, they're going to be towards the bottom. Which team is closer to getting out of it? That's an interesting question to me, because I think, you know, if you're the Titans and you find a quarterback, that can be, as we've seen throughout the league, that can be a huge elevator in your performance. You have the number 1 overall pick. There are some options available to you to potentially address that. You know, the Predators, I think clearly, if you're comparing the two, even though it's different sports, the Predators are a more talented roster. I think significantly more talented roster than the Titans have. They're also old. Like, they got a lot of old players. They're in an interesting spot right now. So I throw this to you. If you look at the Titans, you look at the Predators, which team do you think is closer to getting out of the rut that they're in right now?
I think I'd have to go with the Titans, and really I'm going with the Titans because of the difference in the leagues. Because in the NFL, you know, you can, in the NFL you can make. Sometimes it looks like it's just a dramatic one-year turnaround. It's been in the making a little bit. I think with Houston, for example, they had added some good players, like, you know, over those years of being crap. The year that they had the breakthrough, you know, there were some of the guys who were part of that had been added in recent years. So I mean, it's not like it was all, everybody was brand new and they made that turnaround. But new head coach, new quarterback, new edge guy, right? I mean, you can have dramatic turnarounds. But the bottom line is, you get in the playoffs and you have one good game, and all of a sudden, like, you're right there. Look at the 2019 Titans, 2-4, worst offense in the league. Looks like Kaharski's having a little trouble figuring out Zoom here. Hi, Paul. And you know, so you can do that. The Titans don't look close at all. I can't point to anything and say, see, but I can just point to the NFL and the nature of the NFL, and a great offseason, a couple things break your way. You can be a very, you know, you can change things dramatically. In the NHL, obviously, it's just so much harder. It's just hard for me to look at the Preds and think that, you know, that it's going to get markedly better. And I mean, I hope I'm wrong, but everybody's a year older next year. You know, obviously, UC Saros is a huge part of that, and returning to form as he gets into his 30s. But there just isn't that much flexibility. So, I mean, getting out of it also means I don't think I can't look at either of them and say we're going to be talking about championship contention anytime soon.
We're so far away from that. Yeah.
Yeah. But and certainly, like, could you look at this Preds roster? Imagine some of these young guys taking steps. Imagine just like fresh start for the vets, and they have a good start next year. They get in the playoffs. Well, is that getting out of it? I mean, if getting out of it is just getting into the playoffs, then I guess you could argue the other way of what I just did. But I mean, getting out of it to the point where, okay, there's actually a light at the end of the tunnel, and you're like, okay, you can see where now you have another good offseason and you can really have something. The Preds are just stuck with so many of these contracts. It's hard for me to get there.
Well, the real answer is they're both, at the moment, it feels like miles away. Like, it's hard for me to imagine the Titans being competitive anytime soon, given the way that they've been run the last 4 or 5 years, with the way that things have gone on around here. That owner that we've talked about a lot. The one thing I'll say in favor of the Predators, like, I think they're a better run organization than the Titans are. And I look, sometimes we see it in the league. I brought up the New Jersey example. New Jersey was bad last year. They had a lot of expectations on them heading into the year. They were bad, and they've rebounded this year, and they've been good. Now, they made a lot of moves in the offseason. How much flexibility are the Predators going to have to make some moves this offseason? I don't know. Like, it's going to be interesting to see what Trotz's strategy looks like there. Both of them feel far away at the moment. I'm with you on the flexibility part of it. It's just harder to do it in the NHL. I would say the Predators are better run than the Titans are. So that gives you a little bit of hope there. Like the thing with the Titans is if you can nail a number one pick, particularly at quarterback, it changes so much. It changes the entire landscape of all of it. And that happens in the NHL, but I think it's a little bit harder. Like the McDavids don't just grow on trees in the NHL where they come in and immediately they change your franchise.
Right. Now the Preds may be, they may be headed toward getting, if it's one of these three guys that people think are on their own tier, right? Then that could be a huge jolt. And I agree with you on their better run. I also would say, look, Barry Trotz is a beloved figure. He's a great coach in the history of the NHL. It's early in his time as a GM, and
it's not going well.
Yeah, it's not going well. So, at some point, you just have to isolate him as a GM and say, okay, what's your next move?
Yeah, there's a lot to discover, I think, still with him. Like, can he get them out of this? Or are they just stuck right now because of some of the moves that he's made? The coach, is Brunette going to be here after this season ends? Or are they going in a different direction with the coach? Like, some of that's still yet to be determined. Like on the Titans side, I have no idea how good or not good Mike Borgonzi and Chad Brinker together in this new conglomeration they got over there are going to be. They could be great. Like, there's a lot of skepticism from my end looking at the Titans right now on the Borgonzi, Brinker, all that setup. They could be great, though. Like, we don't talk about that possibility a whole lot, given what's going on around here. But when they got a clean slate. Maybe this is the right hire. I mean, look, Amy Adams Strunk has been the owner. We've seen her be an owner when times have gone really well. We've seen her be an owner when times have gone really poorly. Sometimes you hire good people, and that overcomes bad ownership in professional sports.
Yeah. Karski, are you okay? Like, you keep going in and out. Did you accidentally trip into the dark web? Are you all right, buddy?
No, I'm great.
Don't look at the porn.
What's that about?
The dark web, PK. Go with it. Just give us your analysis. God.
Don't throw your stuff on me, Chief. Yeah, we don't have any idea about the Titans ownership. I think both teams, it seems to me, have earned themselves this thing that I've been talking about consistently with the Titans is this skepticism. You have to prove stuff now. I'm not going to watch. I don't think Preds people are looking at anything they do and thinking, oh yeah, this will fix it, as opposed to show me. And certainly I'm encouraging Titans fans to look at things like that as opposed to considering the next free agent signing with the same joy they looked at last year's free agent signings, because while there's a new general manager, there's still, the same coach, the same czar, and the same owner.
I'm interested to see, let's say the Titans go the veteran quarterback route. I think we've seen some of that just based on some of the responses we've gotten in terms of, like, there's a lot of, all right, you're going to have to show me, like, before I get really excited. Like, if they go out and they bring in a Derek Carr or an Aaron Rodgers or whoever, name your veteran quarterback that's had reasonable success in the NFL. Like, do Titans fans, do they get enamored with that? Like, by the time camp rolls around, are we doing the same thing that we heard a lot last year, which is, look at this team, they got a chance to be pretty good? Or if Titans fans been beaten down so long at this point that we're going to see a whole lot less of that heading into next year. Well, I'm interested to see how that goes.
All of those guys come with holes. Obviously, you're not going to find a magic bullet, so to speak. With a veteran quarterback in the NFL, it doesn't really happen. And but so that's on the one side. On the other side, who who of that bunch doesn't come in with a significantly better resume than Will Levis. So you would expect them to be better, and again, I would urge patience, and not prejudgment, which is impossible in this day and age. Everybody's going to immediately, make a declaration one way or the other. Most people are. It's going to be hard for them if they sign one of those veterans not to immediately be better at quarterback, even if they're still bad. You can still be bad, but better at quarterback with a lot of those guys that you name.
So, positive PK, what's the nicest thing that you can say about both the Titans and the Preds? Yeah.
Occupants of downtown that bring interesting afternoons and evenings to the city.
Oh, you combine them. Yeah. They are people of interest in the city of Nashville. Congratulations.
I mean, I think I had one for the Titans, right? It's like, hey, they have the number 1 overall pick. That's fun.
Yeah. One of them's taking me, not taking me, but forcing me to Indianapolis next week.
Oh,
forcing? I am so jealous.
How disappointed are you that Rexrode's not going to be there?
Yeah, the more the merrier. I say let's all suffer together. There's so many people there. The amazing thing is that you go there and there's so many people that like love it. Like, oh, look at that.
Oh, it's insane. It's insane. Like they get excited about this. Like, do you know what? Do you like sports? Because I do. You know what happens in sports? People play games and compete against each other. Well, I mean, exercise is good. Like we all can agree that exercise is a good part of your life, but I don't want to watch people exercise. What? It's the dumbest thing ever, man. But hey, you should do like a live like Insta so that we can all like live it with you. So think about that. Are you on Insta?
I'm on Insta. I'm on everything.
Can you do that?
Are you on Insta?
No, I'm not on Insta.
I don't know.
I'm not going to watch it.
I don't know if you could do live stuff from inside the building while people are running or doing drills.
No, they're not going to find it. What you put it on the dark web? What does D-Mace do when he does the show?
He does Instagram. Like you need to get on Instagram.
There you go. All right.
What's he doing with Instagram?
He just turns it on the live sometimes when they're on the radio.
And I getting killer ratings out of that?
I don't know. You'd have to ask him. 615-737-1025, our phone number. PK is with us for the rest of the show. We'll get into all things Titans with him. The Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode coming up next as well. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063, The Game.
Sometimes he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed. And sometimes he's just, well, Joe.
Awkward moment. Let's do it.
This is the Rex Rant, now on Robby and Rexrode.
The hall monitor this year, like who stole the chips in the meeting room and who didn't, like who took them, who didn't.
Yeah.
Candy bars.
No, we should have listened. You know, Levis taking the trail mix was an omen about his quarterback play. I made a beef chili yesterday. Okay, now I usually make I got white chicken turkey more often. Made it nice beef chili, and I thought it was really good. I didn't go crazy with the cayenne. You know, I mean, I've had 2 Pepsis.
It's that time of the day. Time for the Rex Rant with Joe Rexrode. You can check it out every morning here on the program. Joseph, the floor is yours.
It was a mess that day, Robbie. I mean, he was sweating and he had all these medicines lined up in front of him, and he was running out during breaks. He was a mess.
It wasn't that bad.
Were you worried about gout, PK? Are you worried that there's a flare up coming?
Oh, I was so concerned about the present condition that I didn't have time to think of the future condition.
By the way, did you guys happen to watch the SNL 3-hour special?
I laughed 3 times, and it was all during the news. It was really bad.
Oh God, you're such a wet blanket.
It really
it wasn't really bad. Yeah, well, the last I mean, come on, Eddie Murphy impersonating Tracy Morgan, that was freaking amazing.
That was all right.
McCartney was amazing too, but what's her name? You know, who does the Debbie Downer had mentioned her gout, which I
almost texted you.
Yeah. See, you laughed at that, and yeah, you're ripping the show.
I mean,
Really,
we'll still get updates from people pointing out, you know, the accomplishments of Gout out there. We really got to work to get him on the program.
I feel like he's not been running a lot lately.
Well,
it's taking it easy.
It's Gout's off season. So, and just like me, it's my off season for beef chili, because that definitely is a gout potential accelerator. All right, today I think that the theme of today is, like, if you don't normally talk about something, you shouldn't be allowed to just say dumb crap about it. And I'm guilty of this too. You know, it's like just drive by, yeah, they suck. You know, like if you cover something, if you cover a team closely, there's always nuances, right? There's always, there's more to the story. It's not that simple. And when you don't, sometimes it's just like, you can just easily just, you know, throw crap into the air and it's fine. And yes, this is still inspired. The screaming about the NBA, I asked people who want to do that to, like, at least try to have some sense of history and also some sense of, like, how things work. Like, it's pretty well documented. So quickly recap this. I think Jared was talking about, like, how the ESPN spends so much time in the NBA, so little on hockey, which, by the way, I'm on board with that idea. And of course, you mentioned earlier in the show, Robbie, PK, Subban, and they're actually getting into the Four Nations thing. But then, you know, you gotta do with this broad brush of ignorance, right? To make your point, make a strong point. The NBA players don't care. They're lazy. They're selfish. And the All-Star game, it used to be amazing, a high-level death match, the height of competition, and now it's just ruined. Okay, so first of all, let's deal with that. Okay. Is the NBA All-Star game worse out? It's terrible now, especially because to me, like, they're doing all these different teams and short game. Like, Steph Curry's the MVP of, like, a 5-minute game where he scored 12 points. And then there's it's terrible what they've done. They never should have gotten away from just East-West, and all these different format changes they think have made it interesting have not at all. But guys, go back and watch an NBA All-Star game from the 2000s, from the 90s, from the 80s. I used to love it. I used to watch all the All-Star games as a kid. Do you know how many times people 360 reverse dunked while other people were jogging and watching them in the freaking NBA All-Star game? Can we please not go back in time and say, oh, back in the day, it was such a great competition? Is it worse now? Yes. But this is away from Jared. These old heads who played in the league are the biggest culprits. Like, they don't remember when Barkley doesn't remember that he played in All-Star games. Like, oh, look at Michael Jordan dunking. That's great. They also don't understand that people keep getting bigger, stronger, faster, more skilled, and would mop the floor with their teams from then. But that's another rant that, as you know, Robbie, I have like every 3 months. Then there's load management. I mean, this is not a secret. I can't speak for every player in every situation, but it's very well documented. This is not the players get mad about this. Steph Curry has fought this. This comes from the top. This is ownership on the advice of analytics folks who found links between X number of minutes, Y amount of playoff success. It's crap for the fans. It's a disaster. Fans are getting screwed over. Ownership needs to answer for this. But this is not, I'm an NBA star. I don't care. I'm just going to sit. So if you want the absolute essence of laziness, of not caring enough to do your job well, that take is the definition of it.
Nice. Look at you. You got angry. You found a topic.
That's a good rant.
Actually ranted about it.
Oh, thanks. Oh, I just really want your approval, PK.
That's a
You
good rant.
should, because I know what a rant is, and that was a rant.
Yeah, because you rant when you wash your hands after going to the bathroom at yourself
It's
in the
called
mirror.
the Rex rant. The word is in the segment.
I did not force this to be a daily thing.
Yeah, but it is a
But
deal.
it is. You got to bring it.
The All-Star game in the NBA has never been a defensive thing. Anybody pretending that it was like a real competition is crazy. But now it's, who would watch that? Why?
It's awful.
That's
Like,
terrible.
yeah.
No, totally. But again, like everybody seems to want to point to the players on these things. It's the people in charge of the league who are screwing it up.
Look, to that point,
Playing hard no matter what the format.
certainly not in the All-Star game. Like the league itself has got some big problems right now. Like I'm starting to think, Joe, that Adam Silver might be an idiot. Like that's probably where the problems began. Like this stupid
He's no David
in-season tournament.
Things a
This
tournament.
stupid idea. He's like, well, maybe we should just do 10-minute quarters out. Like I'm starting to think Adam Silver might be a total moron, and that's probably where their biggest problem begins.
And by the way, the 10-minute quarters goes along with what I just said. It's a minutes thing that these people have figured out. Like we have to draw back if we're going to have success in the postseason, And yes, it's a terrible idea. But again, to me, it's like you're just going to have to cut but they won't do that, right? They're not going to cut their inventory. The owners are not going to cut, right? But it's a terrible situation, and I agree. He is. That is the one thing I will say. Like again, the old teams that I love from back in the day, they get killed right now by these teams, killed. But the old commissioner definitely better than the current commissioner.
615-737-1025, our phone number. Kuharski is with us for the next hour. We'll get into all things Tennessee Titans with him. Take your questions as well for PK on our text line. This is Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Paul Kuharski from paulkuharski.com with us for the next hour here on Robby and Rexrode, talking all things Tennessee Titans. We welcome your thoughts, your questions for PK on our text line, driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com, 615-737-1025. PK, how's the snow looking in your neck of the woods? Are you going to be traversing out in it today?
Deep, deep. My boy has a friend that lives not that far away. I'm a believer that he should walk, but he gets driven. And, he's got a tough trudge home to get to his sledding stuff to go out later.
Hey, I may have to do some sledding today as well. The toddler last time out, Joe, not a huge fan of the sledding. She was out there for about 5 minutes and was like, yeah, we'll try it again today. See how it goes.
I told him if I asked for a ride from my parents to cover this distance, I would have been laughed at in my face. But I did not, in fact, have a friend who lived this distance. So I can't say for sure.
Yeah, that's true.
You would have walked and you would have been barefoot, and you know it.
Uphill both ways. So, PK, we talked about the wide receiving options for the Titans that are going to be out there, both in free agency, someone in the draft, but focusing in on free agency, maybe even via trade. You know, Bill Barnwell put out his list a couple of days ago, going over some trade candidates. I don't think it makes any sense for the Titans whatsoever to involve themselves in a trade for a Deebo Samuel, who I have concerns about, aren't very good anymore. You know, Tyreek Hill could be traded away from Miami. I just think where the Titans are right now, that doesn't make any sense. There are some veteran wide receivers on the free agent market that we've been asked about, whether that's Amari Cooper, whether that's a Stephon Diggs, a Keenan Allen. None of those guys really excite me, but I also realize that they've got a lot of work to do to repair the wide receiver room. So how do you view that job in front of the Titans on that front, and how do you view the veteran market available at wide receiver this offseason?
Yeah, I actually, you guys inspired me yesterday to write the piece that I wrote about veteran free agent wide receivers. I started with wide receivers as opposed to offensive line help, but it was you talking about Ronnie Stanley, your brother.
Yes.
Because I just think we got to stay away from age and injuries. And if you look at these wide receivers, T. Higgins is a prize, right? He's only 26. He's missed 20% of his games hurt, which is not, that's kind of an average number for these guys. But he had a pretty damn good season despite playing only 12 games. He's going to get tagged. He's going to wind up in Cincinnati. But, here with his size, 6'4" and at 219 and connected to Callahan and all that, it'd certainly be attractive. But you look at these other guys, Godwin's coming off a dislocated ankle. Diggs is coming off a torn ACL. Godwin's 29, so at least he's south of 30. These are ages at the beginning of the season. Diggs will be 31. Cooper will be 31, and he's been passed around. So you wonder about, Raiders gave up on him. Cowboys gave up on him. Browns gave up on him. Maybe now the Bills are going to give up on him. Keenan Allen is just a very old 33. I'm wary of all of them. I think the Titans got their older receiver last year in Calvin Ridley. Now you need to re-sign NWI, and then you're
damn right. Say it again.
You're due to go get a young up and coming receiver from the draft. So this guy was sending out research yesterday that I found to be very interesting. 60% of teams on the rosters at the end of the season were drafted by their teams. Only offensive line was a higher percentage, 61%. A league low 20% of receivers arrived on rosters via free agency. So that tells you've got to get them and raise them in your program. And the Titans haven't, they took their big swing most recently with Traylon Burks, and it didn't work. It's time for another swing. This isn't as good a draft at wide receiver as the last couple, but there's still attractive guys in there that you would want, that could be in your top 3 very easily.
Well, that's interesting research, and those are compelling numbers. So does something like that shape an entire strategy in which you say, look, we have to sign offensive linemen or edge or say whatever it is, because we have to draft a receiver? Like, we have to, our free agency strategy has to start with the idea that, like, it doesn't make sense. None of these guys are attractive. They're all falling apart. Look at the data. So we need, like, receiver, even though everybody talks about best player, receiver has to be addressed in this draft. Is that, am I taking it too far? Is that a sound strategy for a team?
I think that, I haven't assessed fully what's there in at the edge and on the offensive line, but it's better than what's there at wide receiver. Now, I don't know about big ticket items. They set it up that I think we'll all be surprised by big ticket items, or by multiple big ticket items, by the way they talked about free agency, supplementing. But I do think you have to be dictated to by what's available in the market, and comparing the free agent pool versus the draft pool, not just this year, but in the years to come. And generally speaking, wide receivers are pouring into the league. You watch college football on any given Sunday, and the highlight reels are never lacking for amazing catches by amazing physical specimens. And the offensive line play, it is what college football is, but I don't know how often you're looking at a guy going, whoa, I can't wait to see that guy in broad terms, in number terms, in terms of offensive line and stuff like that. So I think, I would expect that we'll see them be more active. I don't know how active that is, but I think there are more solutions on the offensive line and at edge. Not that are going to dismiss those as needs in the draft, but that can help in free agency than at wide receiver. There are a couple wide receivers, like, I think, who are patchwork kind of guys. I brought up 2 in here that I'm intrigued by, in Demarcus Robinson, who had a very NWI-like season. He had 7 touchdowns on 31 receptions, and he was 3rd in the NFL in targeted air yards, 15.7, which, he was a big, deep threat. Also, all of these guys I'm looking at that I talked about, with their injuries, a huge list of injuries and how many games they've missed and everything. I know this guy is a number 3, right? But he's missed 1 game of 148 games. He's been on a playoff team every season of his 9-season career, and he played the 11th most snaps in the NFL last year. You're not worrying about durability there. And I think Josh Palmer, particularly if the Titans lose NWI, could be a clear number 3. He also averaged 15.2 air yards per target, kind of thing I'm looking for from them.
Yeah, they're going to have to do something like that, right? They're going to have to backfill the room too in free agency, right? To some extent.
Well, they've got basically an entire room outside of Ridley and hopefully NWI to kind of restock here. One thing philosophically that I'm interested to see, not just with the Titans moving forward, but league wide, like, PK is right. We've heard for years now about there's a lot of wide receivers coming from college football to the league that can play. There's the wide receiving part of the draft has been really good the last few years. And it's led people to wonder, like, okay, everybody knows that Justin Jefferson, Tyreek Hill, your upper crust elite guys, they're going to get paid. But our team's going to be more hesitant to pay like the tier below those guys. Are they going to be more hesitant to do that given the younger talent that's coming in? Like, honestly, like, I think Cincinnati should seriously consider that with T. Higgins, right? Like, if bringing T. Higgins back on a tag or signing him to a long-term deal, like Joe, if that costs them Trey Hendrickson, is that worth it? Like, is it worth bringing T. Higgins back to be your number 2 wide receiver with the money you're paying him? If that ends up costing you your elite edge rusher at that time, I would say no. I don't think it is. So
I mean, if you're them, you have to keep them all together.
I think you have to, like, but that may not be.
But in
may
your
not be able to do it.
in your equation, I think you're right. If you're good, if you have a great quarterback, and you feel confident about scouting, some of these teams, I mean, Kansas City said, "Hey, in our financial formula, Tyreek Hill doesn't fit, and we're just going to replenish wide receivers." And we thought maybe that was the beginning of a trend. I don't know that it's been the beginning of a trend, but I think there are some teams with quarterbacks good enough that they say, "Hey, we can do this." And we've seen this is teams with really good quarterbacks. Brady only had one segment of his career where he had great receivers, particularly great receiver with Moss. In recent eras, Manning was the only one that had great receivers, consistently great receivers. And even at the end, that petered out after Reggie Wayne.
Right. Yeah. But of course, I still would, and I know they just won it last year, just got to the Super Bowl, but I also would argue that like Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs were a lot scarier when they had Tyreek Hill to go with Kelsey in his prime, right? Yeah, like sometimes tight ends should be just considered because like Brady always had Gronk, and I know it's a different position, but like if you have someone who is just uncoverable or just you have an incredible chemistry with them downfield, that still counts as something, right? And that when you look at the Titans, they're lacking in all areas.
Well, I guess I just wonder though, like, whether it's like you're trying to map out your wide receiver room for the next 2-3 years. What's that going to look like? Well, do you view it, if you're the Titans, of what you're saying, Joe, of we have to make sure it's a priority to go get a receiver in the draft this year? Or are you looking at it and saying, no, with all the people coming in via the draft and all these young wide receivers coming in, are the second tier guys, are they going to become available in free agency more often? PK threw the numbers out. You don't find wide receivers in free agency that often. Like, is that going to change? Not with the top guys, but with the tier below those guys. Is that going to change with the more talent that's coming in out of the draft at wide receiver? Can you bank on being able to have a bigger talent pool at wide receiver moving forward in free agency? That's what I'm curious to see.
I don't know. Those second guys, on teams. The one thing that's come up in Hall of Fame conversations is some interesting numbers about good wide receivers getting their numbers no matter who their quarterbacks are. That's top echelon wide receivers. But if you look at like Torrey Holt after Kurt Warner, or if you look at Andre Johnson, who didn't have a good quarterback his whole career,
Brock Osweiler throwing to him.
Yeah. They get their numbers no matter who the quarterback is. But I think teams without great quarterbacks value that number 2 wide receiver pretty heavily. And I think teams are reluctant to go get those guys for anything big. I mean, I go all the way back to Alvin Harper. Remember Alvin Harper?
Yeah, just go routes.
Well, Tampa Bay was like, oh, there's a number 2 who could come be our number 1, and that he's kind of the patron saint of being cautious about that idea. Like, if you're going shopping for a number 2 who you think's a number 1, you better be careful. Odds are he's a number 2.
Yeah, Corey Davis is a good example here locally.
I worry about that with T. Higgins. Like, if T. Higgins actually got to free agency, like, is he actually a number 1 wide receiver? Like, we all know he's good. Is he a number 1 guy? Like, how much does he benefit playing with Burrow and Chase?
Yeah, I'd be all right. I don't think there's any chance he's coming to Tennessee. But if you put him in a receiving core with Calvin Ridley, I think you'd be fine with those as your top 2. I don't know that you need to have a knighting ceremony where one of them is named number 1. I think with those as your top 2 guys, you'd be pretty set at wide receiver. But again, not particularly young. Higgins, You get three years out of him. I'm looking for a guy you get 2 contracts out of.
We'll have more with PK coming up next. Take more of your thoughts on the Titans. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Welcome back in, Robby and Rexrode, 1025-1063, The Game. Taking your thoughts on our phone and text lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon. Big bank muscle, small bank hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. We are live from our Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home with a $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Paul Kuharsky, Nick Keys are here with you on this Wednesday morning, taking your thoughts on the Titans. Joe, I'm interested to see, like, the wide receiver part of this. You bring up a good point there. Like, if you look at it and you don't love the options in free agency at wide receiver, we know you have to address wide receiver in some capacity. Does that make you more likely to be aggressive elsewhere via free agency in the offseason to then go draft a wide receiver high in this year's draft, whether that's trading down and picking one up or getting in the second round with one as well?
Way to take that all the way until PK got back from eating the yellow snow.
I thought it was good.
That was very good. Yeah, no, that is, it's like how much, I mean, just big picture philosophically, how much do teams, because, you have to have a plan. Everybody says you have to have a plan, which is true, right? But you also, every team understands that you can have a plan. I mean, let's use the cliche of you can have a plan a football game till you get punched in the mouth. And again, go back to the Titans last year. We can all rip Rand Carthon, but they had a plan. They pivoted. They got a player who, I mean, imagine if if the Titans didn't sign Calvin Ridley last year, what would we be talking about with wide receiver right now, right? Like, so that was not their plan. They pivoted to it, and I think it's going to at least work out reasonably well. He's good. He's not going to be anybody's, surefire, what a great number one receiver, but he makes plays.
They would
So
have signed somebody else, but yeah, it would have been.
yeah, sure. But I mean, like,
obviously it was to re-sign Danico Autry and Aziz.
right, exactly. So that's your plan, and then you're forced to change your plan. So then you maybe get stronger somewhere, weaker somewhere else. It's interesting to me to think about the idea of like looking at data that you presented there, which is sort of the trend of how it goes with veteran receivers, and then also you look at just the overall quality of certain positions in a draft and how much that dictates what you do before you get to the draft.
I think and they've got to, the miss rate's got to be down. They need to be more dynamic at wide receiver. We've said that for a long time. DeAndre Hopkins was a good get, right? Finally, out of them bringing in like big time older receivers. He accomplished more than all of those other guys that they brought in combined, Moss and Andre Johnson and Carl Pickens and that whole list, which goes back a long time. It might be unfair to include some of those guys, but
Yancey Thigpen.
Yeah. Well, I'll set that aside for a minute. They need to stop that approach. Yancey Thigpen was a bust, but listen, Yancey Thigpen in 1998, I believe, they did what you wanted them to do. They had a huge hole at wide receiver, and they went out and signed the best guy in the market. Now, sometimes you bust with that. So I mean, I killed Floyd Reese in person, and I'm sure I wrote stories about Yancey Thigpen busting, but it was the same with Andy Levitre. I mean, Andy Levitre didn't fit what the Titans did, but they needed a guard. And everybody always said, why don't you guys go out and get the best damn free agent at a position to fix it? Well, they tried it with Andy Levitre, and Andy Levitre sucked. And so it's a huge mistake, and it's a scouting error because he didn't really fit what they did, and he had no personality and all of that. But I cut them a little bit of a break when fans are constantly begging for them to go get the best guy in free agency at a position of weakness, and they do it. And then it doesn't work out. I think every 5 years, you almost need to do that to reset it with the fans to say, see, this doesn't work. This is why we don't do it.
Shouldn't you just operate independently of what the fans are saying and build good teams?
Yes, of course you should. But those serve as benchmark reminders. In 1998, as bad as they were at wide receiver, in part because they either just had or were just about to pass on Randy Moss, they took a shot.
What's going to be interesting to me is how do you find that young receiver? Like, you're picking number one. You're not taking any receiver in this draft number one. At least I don't think so. Now, if you trade back, if somebody trades up with you, do you where are you trading back to? Are you trading back to 4? Are you trading back to 9? And then it starts to get interesting. The first round receivers we talked about, Joe, like Ted McMillan, I think he's got a chance to be pretty good. Luther Burden, what's he going to be at the NFL level? Like, you get later in the draft, the Restrepo kid out of Miami. I think he's a good player. Probably
slot only, I think.
Slot only.
I'm not interested in slot only.
Right. So, how do you go about finding that young receiver based on the current draft setup that they have, which at the moment does not include a third-round pick, and you need offensive line help, and you need edge rusher help, and you need a quarterback?
Yeah, that's a great question. I participated in the athletic mock draft yesterday, and I can't.
Who's undraftable the way that you took a salary cap hit of $0.
Hey, I saved him. I saved him $0.
Really
well done. Editors over there. I'm a subscriber to this product. I mean, these middle managers at these companies, I'm very familiar with them. If they can't catch that, what are they doing exactly?
Hey, it's addition by subtraction. Okay, the savings is the heartache of hoping he's good and finding out he's not. But anyway, I can't divulge.
Talk about your editors failing.
okay. I can't divulge the outcome of the draft, but I will say that, as you get if you get obviously a few picks into it, I mean, I have no idea. Like that's where you would get into your big board, right? And it's like, well, Tet McMillan versus Kelvin Banks versus whatever, like Mike. I mean, all those positions are high need, so that's what it is. But it's not a comforting place to be once you get a few spots low in this draft. And that's where I mean, look, if you can get into the third round and add picks, then okay. I mean, that's where you got to make your money there. But I don't know. I mean, I don't look at any of these receivers and think, Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson. Of course, I'm sitting here saying Justin Jefferson, he went, what, 20 something? I mean, that's the thing. That's actually shocking when you think about it.
There isn't one of those, which is probably good for the Titans in that it makes things a little bit easier early. Though the more better players, the better for them. We talked about this last week a little bit. I'm kind of intrigued by I'd love to know ultimately, no matter what happens, where the Titans stand on something like this. The two TCU kids, right? Savion Williams is an incredible athletic freak, like 40-inch vertical jump, imposing physical, like 6'3", almost 230, contested catch, ridiculous speed, acceleration, all this stuff. But his production wasn't great, and he drops the ball too much, and you're really going to need to refine this guy and grow him, and it could bust. And his teammate Jack Bash, I think it's pronounced right, a lot of people are saying Beck, is incredible, doesn't drop anything. He's smaller, you can play him anywhere, but he's automatic, but he's got average speed and average explosiveness, but great footwork and routes and stuff like that. So where do you come down on that? Once upon a time, the Titans loved a Williams type, Justin Hunter, Dorial Green, Beckham. And then the new regime came in and said, we're done with that. We're going to get Besh types who know how to play the position. Well, I'd love to know where they come down on that now. I would think probably towards a Bash.
Racing McMath, big and fast.
That's exactly what I was going to say. AJ talked about Racing McMath, reminding him of Julio Jones. Get him back in there.
God, let's stop. They should have an edict. We touched on this last week too, of the things that they said about Traylon Burks. They should have an edict about not pumping up the tires of average players, so that the fan expectations aren't Hall of Fame performances out of, practice squad level guys.
Anthony Ferkser, top flight tight end. Kevin Byard say that?
One too.
He did.
615-737-1025, our phone number. One question that I want to get PK's thoughts on coming up next, including some research he did on the number 1 overall pick. We'll get to that coming up next with him. More of your thoughts for PK as well. 615-737-1025. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Robby and Rexrode, 1025, 1063 The Game. Robby Stanley, Joe Rexrode, Paul Kuharski, Nick Keyser here with you on this Wednesday morning. Taking your thoughts on the Titans, 615-737-1025. PK, earlier this week at paulkuharski.com, you did an exercise on the number 1 overall pick and the rarity of having a team that needs a quarterback, needs a young developmental quarterback that doesn't elect to go that way with the number 1 overall pick. Now, teams have traded out of that. The Titans could trade out of number 1 and pick elsewhere. But if they're sticking around at number 1 and either no one wants to trade up with them or they don't get an offer that they like and they stick at number 1, based on the research you've done, the people you've talked to, how rare is it for the Titans who need a quarterback to stick and pick at number 1 and to not take that quarterback?
Well, really, only 2 times did it happen in the last 25 years with a team that didn't have an entrenched quarterback. And the 2017 Browns with Myles Garrett and the 2018 Dolphins both took second-round quarterbacks. DeShone Kizer, no answer, and Chad Henne, who had a career. But the 2 of them, and I think pretty sure in 2017, the first and second round were still the same day. So you come out of the first day of the draft having taken, they didn't take Eric Fisher. They took, Long. So you come out of that first day having taken a very good player, number 1, and a quarterback, number 2. It's not like now where you would have taken the player in day 1 and spent a whole day getting panned before you get to your quarterback in round 2. And I don't think the Titans would be taking that route where they'd be taking a quarterback in the second round. Those Dolphins also wound up with a gift from the Jets in August when they cut Chad Pennington and they signed him 3 days later, and he came in third in MVP that year. So things turned out pretty well, and Chris Long had 4 very good seasons for them and a very good rookie season. So it's very rare, a scenario like the Titans potentially staying at number 1 and not drafting a quarterback, being a quarterback needy team. Now, they're going to reduce their need to some degree with something that they do in free agency, but, which is becoming more popular because there are more quarterbacks coming free. But right now, the free agent list of quarterbacks stinks. We're waiting on moves with Cousins, with Carr, potential Stafford trade. And I'm growing less and less fond of the idea of a Stafford trade. I just don't want them to move picks for anything, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting one because how many he would be, to me, the best quarterback that we're talking about for sure. But also, how many years at a high level does he have? He is increasingly immobile from what I can see. And that is one of those like, okay, so how much building around him can you do here in the short term? If you have incredible, couple years of team building, then that might make it pay off. But how do you do that if you're parting with draft capital? That's a tough one.
And you flip that inside out. If you're drafting a guy, either number 1 or later in this draft or next year, you're burning dollars or picks that would ultimately surround him. It's a catch-22 all around.
So if you were looking at a Darnold, I don't know if you've been posed this specifically or not. Would you trade your second round pick for Darnold with the hopes that he's actually like a guy on the rise, still young, and you actually have like a legit top half of the league starter for several years?
I don't think I would. But if they did, it would have to be that. Like, he's your long-term guy.
That's not a bridge. That's the quarterback.
Yeah, you see, at least five years of Sam Darnold. The only reason you're drafting a quarterback is for a guy behind him who you hope you could develop. for way down the road or to flip as an asset, or because you think, he's a 5th-round guy who could be a backup quarterback in the league, and you're now spending all your assets to surround Sam Darnold. And I don't know. I mean, Sam Darnold was good in Minnesota because he's surrounded by a very good team. So he's not going to be nearly that good early with Tennessee because he's not going to be surrounded by nearly as good a team. Now, does he have the psyche to withstand that? Yeah. Your fan base doesn't. You can't worry about that. But it's going to be a rocky period for sure, I think. Don't you?
A long-term answer at quarterback is the only conceivable scenario to me that's realistic that I would consider moving assets for. Like the Titans need to be in the business of
Who is that?
gaining assets. Like it would be like
Not Stafford because he's too old.
Exactly. Like you would have to believe it's Darnold, and I don't know that I necessarily believe that, but I like they would have to come to the conclusion that it's Darnold. Other than that, like I don't think you should be trading picks for anybody. Like I think I go back to what Brinker said a few weeks ago, and how many picks they want to acquire. How realistic is that going to be? I don't know. Like it's pretty hard to do what he's laid out there, but like with their roster being in the shape it's in right now, unless you are sure that you found a long-term answer at quarterback with their present state right now, I'm not interested in trading picks for anybody.
I know it's impossible to hit that goal if they trade picks. I know that's impossible.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I mean, he didn't say he's, hell, like they're hitting that goal or striving for that goal no matter what. But clearly,
no,
and nobody's hit that goal in the last 3 years. But clearly, they want to have as many draft picks as they can get, and as many draft picks as they can get in the top 100. And any of these deals are not going to lead them that direction. And any deal that they make, they want to come out with more picks than they have. I think J-Rob was big on that, trading 2 for 1, and always coming out with more, even in player deals, ideally coming out with a wash.
Oh, the J-Rob header said something positive about J-Rob. Wow.
J-Rob was one of my favorite dudes to BS with.
Robby, give me one word to characterize
bad decisions, and he would take it.
Give me one word to characterize John Robinson's tenure as Tennessee Titans general manager.
One word.
What was it? What's the evaluation of it? You have to give a one-word evaluation of it.
Decent.
Or 2. Okay. Paul says bad. Paul says bad.
Say Cliff. Boy, you sure were pumping him up like he was getting that Jacksonville job for a guy that didn't even become a finalist. You and really everyone at the station.
That was wishful thinking, man. I mean, that was wishful thinking. I didn't know that he actually had a great chance, but I just was really hoping. That would have been so much fun to have Vrabel and J-Rob both, in the same conference of the Titans the next few years.
They call Amy
Adams should have voted for it too.
As a reference.
The reason that he wasn't a finalist, I wonder why that was.
Because it was so bad.
Shad, I think he do a great job for your organization down there. You should give him a call. You should hire him and take him off my payroll, please. Thank you.
I've never met a bigger fan of Caleb Farley, Isaiah Wilson, and Traylon Burks than Joe Rexrode.
Yes, because that's what I said. I said those are just misunderstood. Those are misunderstood genius picks. That's exactly what I said.
That seems to be what you're saying.
And now you've completely turned on Traylon Burks and want to cut him for $0 savings. It's unbelievable.
The hell of a savings. Great savings
around here. 6.5.
Save.
People make mistakes, but most of them are not reading comprehensions.
We'll have more with BK coming
0.
up next. Robby and Rexrode, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Nashville's best deal of the week from Bavarian Beer House, located at Opry Mills Mall. Enjoy traditional German beer, brats, giant pretzels, and more in their expansive beer hall and garden. Head to theGameNashville.com/deals. Get half off a $50 gift card while supplies last. Robby and Rexrode brought to you by First Horizon, Big Bank Muscle, Small Bank Hustle. Visit firsthorizon.com/get it all. Paul Kuharsky with us here on the program. So I'll throw this out to both of you. We're talking quarterbacks. So let's say Stafford shakes free. Let's say that Cousins shakes free. We know Rodgers is going to be out there. We'll see if he decides to play. Which team right now is the most desirable quarterback destination out there? Like, is it Pittsburgh? Is Pittsburgh at the top of these guys' list of where they want to go? Is it the Giants? If Stafford does shake free, is it the Rams at that point with McVay? Like, how do you view how the pecking order is going to fall here with these quarterbacks in terms of where they're landing?
A great question. I mean, I think the Rams would only be a quick bridge, right? I think they'd be drafting a quarterback next year, if not this year, somebody that maybe they've already got somebody in mind. I don't know. I think Pittsburgh be a great situation. They've got to invest some more resources in offense, though, than just quarterback. I mean, financially, they're so skewed to defense, and that's their identity, and that's great. But in order for them to take the next step and win a playoff game, they're going to have some offense.
They're not elite on defense anymore. The performance does not match the investment.
No, but it gets them to the playoffs pretty much annually. So they're getting some reinforcement that it's a formula that works. It doesn't work well enough. But I think those are the two off the top of my head. I'm looking here for another one.
I can't divulge the results of the mock draft. I think tomorrow we can talk about it. I assume it, but I will say, you can't necessarily look at a bunch of writers and think that this is like some indication of how things are going to go.
We know,
but I'd be a little concerned about a soft market. If I was the Titans for that top pick. That was a really good idea you had of the quarterback needy teams and the rarity of the quarterback needy team not taking the quarterback. But I feel like it just seems to me like that's where it's headed. And I feel like the whole league thinks that's where it's headed.
Yeah.
I think one pivotal moment, if Stafford comes free, could be Giants and Stafford. And if that domino fell, it would reset everything in a big way and not in a good way for the Tennessee Titans.
Yeah, that's a good point. Also, like, are all these guys going to find a starting job? Like these veteran guys out there? I'm not talking about Mac Jones and like Justin Fields. Those guys could end up somewhere starting. Who knows? But like, are all of Rodgers, Stafford, Cousins, Carr, Darnold, like those guys, are they all going to end up being starters next year? It's going to be interesting to see too. Like, is there enough of a market for those guys where they're all going to end up being starting quarterbacks? Because you could view that, if you're the Titans, as a good scenario for you. Like, if you want one of those guys, there's a lot of guys out there at quarterback.
Well, everyone you listed was a starting quarterback last year, and the only two guys that are conceivably bumping people out of starting jobs are Cam Ward and Shedeur Sanders.
In theory, but maybe a Tyler Shugg or a Jackson Dart does the same. Cousins is interesting to me. Like, is Cousins viewed in this league? Does someone out there want him to be their starting, other than like starting quarterback for the first month, but they also draft someone?
Like, planning on him being the quarterback for the whole year.
Yeah, I have my doubts about that at this point.
Maybe here.
Well, that's the thing. Does Cousins finally come at a really like a huge reduction in price tag? And if that's the case, then you could make the case for like the Titans could do the Cousins thing and the draft thing.
Yeah. But see there, I'd be like Cousins and a later quarterback, but none of the later quarterbacks get me excited. So I'd say Cousins and a draft pick next year. And this year, you go Cousins and Levis and somebody you bring in for camp. who's
Well,
another veteran free agent who's super cheap.
Well, I just feel like a lot of Titans fans have talked themselves into, well, they're trading back. Like it's going to happen. They're trading back, whether it's to 3 to 5, wherever it is, but they're going to trade back. They're going to pick up more picks. And I guess my question is, what happens if they can't trade back and they don't love the quarterbacks? Like, are people going to be happy with them just taking Abdul Carter at number 1 overall and not getting any additional picks for it?
I put up a poll last week on that. Like, would you be disappointed if they stayed at 1 and didn't take a quarterback, or no, and took a quarterback? 60% said they'd be all right with a 40% are okay with the idea. I'm totally tangling this up.
This is great. No, you're just as good as me at reading the overthecap.com. Except these are your own numbers.
40% are going to be okay with the idea of the Titans taking a non-quarterback at number 1.
Okay. That about matches up. Like I think
that's still a big portion.
It is. But I think to me, what I would love is trade back to 3, end up with Travis Hunter or Abdul Carter anyway, and then pick up more picks. I just don't know how realistic that's going to be.
I think the vast majority of fans want that. Well, that would be the ideal scenario. Trade
Absolutely.
to 3, ideally Carter's there because Garrett hasn't moved. But if it's not Carter, you end up with Hunter, and you go from there.
I found the market for the top pick very soft. That's all I'm going to say. But it's a bunch of writers. Who knows?
Talking about an outlet that doesn't catch the fact that your salary cap savings is Traylon Burke. I mean, the editorial and writing staff there's everybody should be way down on that.
His name is Burks, jackass.
What did I say?
Traylon Burke.
I misspeak, and this is supposed to offset the fact that you think he's a salary cap saver.
I mean, this has been a very, very boomeristic about 5 minutes of the show here.
I've already apologized publicly. I don't need to take this berating anymore.
Well, where's your editor? Let's get your editor on to apologize publicly.
Hey,
Where's your editor?
Traylon Hurts have a lot of time to
apparently
hunt some hogs.
My editor is as good as your editor, because both of them would do nothing in this circumstance. So there's a uselessness to middle management that's in evidence.
Addition by subtraction. It works.
PK, enjoy the snow. Thank you for being with us today.
Don't block the box. Be sure to lock your locks. I'm going to a live sporting event Sunday. It's very excited. I'm going to see the Vandy women.
Nice.
Yeah, Michaela Blake's 55 points, baby.
Rutgers Prep, baby.
That's right. That does it for us today. Chase and Big Joe is up next. You're listening to 102.5, 106.3 The Game.